The Billionaire'S twins were born blind. But the new cleaning woman worked a miracle. Jennifer Wilson held tight to her purse strap as she passed through the golden gate of the most imposing mansion in Beverly Hills. At 29, she was about to start another job as a cleaning lady, but something in the air of that house made her feel a tightness in her chest. The housekeeper, Mrs. Abigail, a 60-year-old woman with a severe expression, greeted her at the main entrance. Her dark brown eyes seemed to assess every detail of Jennifer, from the impeccably pressed purple uniform to the gleaming white sneakers. "Listen well, girl," said Abigail, adjusting her glasses on the tip of her nose. "In this house there are very clear rules. Mr. Richard Montgomery does not like noise, does not like conversations, and especially does not like his employees meddling where they haven't been called." Jennifer nodded, sensing there was something more behind those words. Her eyes scanned the entrance hall, admiring the Italian marble floor and the crystal chandelier hanging from the high ceiling. Everything there breathed luxury, but also coldness. "And the girls?" asked Jennifer, remembering she had been informed about the boss's 2 daughters. Abigail's face hardened even more if that was possible. "The girls stay on the 2nd floor. You have no reason to go up there. Your job is to clean the social area, the kitchen, and the office on the ground floor, nothing more." "But don't they go to school? Don't they play around the house?" insisted Jennifer, her natural curiosity speaking louder than prudence. "That is none of your business," Abigail cut in sharply. "Miss Victoria and Miss Vanessa have their own special needs. They are under constant medical care." Jennifer felt a chill in her stomach. Children who didn't leave their room, constant medical care. She had only been working for 1 day, and already felt there were heavy secrets in that house. She began cleaning the main hall, scrubbing each marble tile carefully. The silence of the mansion was almost oppressive, broken only by the ticking of the old clock in the hallway. It was different from the other houses where she had worked, where you always heard the television, conversations, or at least the typical hustle and bustle of children. That's when she heard it. A muffled sound coming from upstairs. It sounded like crying or whispers. Jennifer stopped scrubbing and raised her head, trying to identify it better. "Don't get distracted by noises," said Abigail, appearing as if she had been conjured up. "Focus on your work." But Jennifer couldn't concentrate. All morning her ears picked up small noises coming from the 2nd floor, slow footsteps, objects being dragged, and occasionally a sound that seemed like a child trying to speak softly. At lunchtime she ventured to ask another question. "Mrs. Abigail, may I know how old the girls are?" 8 years old, replied the housekeeper, stirring the soup more forcefully than necessary. "They're twins." 8-year-old twins, repeated Jennifer thoughtfully. "And they never come down to play." Abigail stopped stirring the soup and stared at Jennifer with a look that mixed sadness and irritation. "Girl, you have a good job here. Mr. Richard pays well, very well. 7 cleaning ladies have passed through here in the last 2 years. They all asked too many questions, tried to meddle where they shouldn't. They were all let go. But what happened to them? Why can't they play like normal children?" "Because they are not normal children," exploded Abigail, banging the spoon on the pot. Then she took a deep breath and lowered her voice. "The young ladies were born blind, completely blind. They can't see anything at all." Jennifer felt her heart tighten. Blind twins, isolated on the 2nd floor, unable to play, without school. The situation was starting to make a sad sense. "Mr. Richard thinks it's better for them to stay protected," continued Abigail, her voice now softer. "He has consulted the best doctors in the country and the world, spent millions on treatments, experimental surgeries, alternative therapies. Nothing worked." "But they're children," said Jennifer, feeling tears welling in her eyes. "Even if they're blind, they need to live, play, learn." "You don't understand," interrupted Abigail. "After his wife passed away 3 years ago, he became desperate. He was afraid the girls would get hurt, that someone would take advantage of their condition. That's why he keeps them safe." Jennifer finished her lunch in silence, but her mind was racing with thoughts. 2 8-year-old girls locked in a room, deprived of experiences every child should have. This wasn't protection, it was imprisonment. Dear listener, If you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the afternoon, while cleaning the library, Jennifer heard heavy footsteps coming down the main staircase. It was Richard Montgomery, a tall man of about 40, with perfectly combed brown hair and an impeccable navy blue suit. His expression was serious, almost stern. "You're the new employee," he said, without any greeting. "Yes, sir, Jennifer Wilson," she replied, giving a small bow. Richard observed her for a few seconds, as if assessing whether she posed any kind of threat. "Has Mrs. Abigail explained your duties?" "Yes, sir." "And the rules?" Jennifer hesitated for a moment before answering. "Yes, sir." "Then you know the second floor is completely off-limits. My daughters, they require special care. Any disruption to their routine can be harmful." "I understand, sir," said Jennifer, but there was a question burning in her throat. "May I ask something?" Richard raised his eyebrows, clearly unaccustomed to employees taking such liberties. "Speak." "The girls, do they ever leave the house, not even to get some air in the garden?" Richard's face changed. The stern expression gave way to something that seemed like pure pain. "They can't go out," he said, his voice growing quieter. "The world outside is too dangerous for them. In here they're safe. They have everything they need." "But, sir, with all due respect, they're children." "They are special children," Richard exploded, making Jennifer step back. "Do you think I haven't tried everything? Do you think I haven't consulted the best specialists in the world? I spent fortunes looking for a cure, a treatment, anything." His hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "I've taken them to clinics in Germany, Canada, Switzerland. They subjected my daughters to painful tests, risky surgeries, experimental therapies that only made them suffer more. In the end, everyone reached the same conclusion. There is no hope." Jennifer felt a wave of compassion for the man before her. Behind the coldness and authoritarianism, there was a desperate father. "So I decided that here in this house, they would have peace," Richard continued. "They wouldn't have to face pitying looks, cruel comments, embarrassing situations. They have private tutors who come twice a week, specialized nurses, everything they could possibly need." "And are they happy?" asked Jennifer, the question slipping out before she could stop herself. Richard was silent for a long moment. "They are safe," he said finally, "and that's what matters." He turned and went up the stairs, leaving Jennifer alone with her troubled thoughts. In the following days, Jennifer tried to focus only on her work, but it was impossible to ignore the sounds coming from the second floor. She began to pay more attention to the details. Every morning, around 9 o'clock, she would hear slow and careful footsteps in the upstairs hallway. Then, the sound of objects being dragged. Sometimes, soft whispers, as if two people were talking in secret. One afternoon, while cleaning the mirror in the main hall, she saw in the reflection a shadow quickly pass by the top of the staircase. It was too small to be an adult. Her curiosity grew with each day, but so did her concern. What kind of life was that for two little girls? No matter how much Richard justified it as protection, it didn't seem natural to keep children completely isolated from the world. At the end of the first week, Jennifer made a decision. She waited until Mrs. Abigail had gone out shopping and Richard was in a meeting in his office. Then, with her heart pounding, she quietly climbed the marble stairs. The second floor was completely different from the rest of the house. While the ground floor was decorated with modern furniture and neutral colors, up here there was a cozy hallway with soft carpets and walls painted in pastel tones. Jennifer walked slowly, trying to locate where the sounds she heard every day were coming from. There were several doors, but only one was slightly ajar. She approached and looked through the crack. Her heart almost stopped. Two identical girls were sitting on the floor of a huge room. They had straight brown hair with bangs, exactly alike, and wore yellow t-shirts. Their eyes, though beautiful, didn't focus on anything specific, confirming their blindness. But what impressed Jennifer the most was the scene before her. The girls were playing, but in a way that broke her heart. They had taken pieces of cloth and were making imaginary dolls, whispering to each other in their own language, full of whispers and touches. "Victoria, is your doll crying?" one of them asked. "No, Vanessa. She's laughing. Listen to the sound she makes," replied the other, shaking the cloth in a way that imitated laughter. The room was full of expensive and sophisticated toys, but they played only with scraps of fabric. Jennifer realized that those toys, however expensive, weren't designed for blind children. They were just pretty objects for the eyes, useless for those who see with their hands. "Someone is watching us," Victoria said suddenly, turning her head toward the door. Jennifer froze. How did she know? "It's true," confirmed Vanessa. "I smell a different perfume. It's not the housekeeper's or Daddy's." The two stood up and walked carefully toward the door. Jennifer stepped back, but it was too late. "Who's there?" asked Victoria, her voice small but brave. Jennifer felt she had no choice. She opened the door slowly. "Hi, girls, my name is Jennifer. I work here in the house." The two smiled at the same time, a beautiful and genuine smile that lit up their faces. "Are you the lady who sings?" asked Vanessa, tilting her head. "Who sings?" "I don't sing," said Jennifer, confused. "Of course you do," insisted Victoria. "Every day, while you clean downstairs, you hum softly. You have a very pretty voice." Jennifer realized she really did have the habit of humming while she worked, something she did without noticing. "You can hear me from up here?" "We hear everything," said Vanessa. "Mrs. Abigail's footsteps are always hurried. Daddy's are heavy and firm. The nurses are light but fast. But yours are different. They're cheerful." "Cheerful?" "Yes," confirmed Victoria. "Like you enjoy being here. The other women who worked here had nervous footsteps, like they were scared all the time." Jennifer was moved by the girls' perception. They really saw the world in a completely different way, through sounds, smells, and sensations. "You two are very smart," she said, kneeling down to their level. "We know a lot of things," said Vanessa proudly. "We know the housekeeper gets sad when she thinks nobody is watching. She sighs a lot. And we know Daddy cries at night in his office," added Victoria, her voice growing softer. "He thinks we don't know, but we hear him." Jennifer's heart tightened. Those girls were far more sensitive and intelligent than the adults around them realized. "Jennifer," said Vanessa, moving closer, "why can't we leave our room?" "And why doesn't anyone play with us?" added Victoria. Jennifer didn't know how to answer. How could she explain to two children that their father, out of fear and excessive love, kept them imprisoned in the name of protection? "Your daddy loves you very much," she began, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes when we love someone very much, we become afraid that something bad might happen." "But we're not made of glass," said Victoria, with impressive wisdom for her 8 years. "We won't break if we go outside." "And we want to see the garden," added Vanessa. "We can smell the flowers, but we're never allowed to touch them." At that moment, Jennifer heard heavy footsteps on the stairs. Richard was coming up. "You must go back to your room," she said quickly. "Don't tell anyone we talked, okay?" "Why?" they both asked at the same time. Because otherwise I might lose my job and I couldn't come here anymore. And I would very much like to keep coming here to hear you humming and playing." The girls smiled and ran back to their room. Jennifer hurried down the stairs and reached the ground floor just as Richard appeared in the hall. "What were you doing up there?" he asked, suspicious. "I heard a strange noise," lied Jennifer. "I thought there might be a problem, but it was nothing." Richard watched her for a few seconds before going up. That night, Jennifer couldn't sleep. She thought about the two girls, their intelligence, their smiles, their simple desires to touch a flower or leave their room. It was unacceptable that such special children lived like prisoners. The next day, she made a risky decision. She began to hum louder on purpose while she worked, knowing the girls were listening. And not just humming, but singing children's songs she had learned when she was little. While cleaning the library, she sang "Little Butterfly is in the Kitchen." In the hall, she sang "Ring Around the Rosie." In the living room, "London Bridge is Falling Down." From upstairs, she began to hear muffled giggles. The girls were enjoying it. After a few days, something extraordinary happened. While Jennifer was singing "Row, row, row your boat" in the kitchen, she heard two small, sweet voices singing along from the second floor. "How can a living fish live out of the cold water?" Jennifer stopped singing, moved. The girls continued alone, their voices harmonizing perfectly. Mrs. Abigail entered the kitchen at that moment and also stopped to listen. "It's been so long since they sang," murmured the housekeeper, with tears in her eyes. "They haven't sung since their mother passed away." "Did their mother sing to them?" asked Jennifer. "Always. Catherine had a beautiful voice. She was a music teacher before she married Mr. Richard. She sang to the girls since they were babies, even after we found out they couldn't see." "And what happened to her?" Abigail sighed deeply. "A car accident. She was coming back from a doctor's appointment for the girls in New York City. It was a very difficult time." "Mr. Richard blamed himself for letting her drive alone. The girls were inconsolable. That's when he decided no one would ever leave the house again." Jennifer began to understand Richard's attitude better. He wasn't just overprotective because of his daughter's blindness, but traumatized by the loss of his wife. "Mrs. Abigail," said Jennifer carefully, "don't you think the girls could have a more normal life?" The housekeeper looked around, making sure they were alone. "Of course I do," she whispered, "but it's not my place to decide. Mr. Richard is a good employer, pays well, treats everyone with respect. But when it comes to the girls, he becomes blinded by fear." "How long have you worked here?" 15 years. I saw the girls being born. I saw the family's joy when they arrived, and I saw everything fall apart when we discovered the blindness and then when we lost Mrs. Catherine." Jennifer was even more moved. This wasn't just the story of two blind girls, but of a family destroyed by grief and fear. In the following days, she continued her project of singing to the girls. But now she had a bigger goal. She wanted to give them back some of the joy they had lost. She began leaving small clues during her songs. When she sang about animals, for example, she imitated their sounds. When she sang about nature, she described textures and aromas. The girls responded enthusiastically, participating more and more. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. One afternoon, while singing Hot Cross Buns in the living room, Jennifer had a brilliant idea. She grabbed some objects, a glass cup, a metal spoon, a ceramic plate, and began tapping the rhythm of the song on them. Each object produced a different sound, creating an interesting percussion. From upstairs, the girls' singing became more animated. They were picking up the different sounds and trying to imitate them by tapping on things in their room. That's when Richard came home. He entered the living room at the exact moment Jennifer was at the peak of her performance, singing cheerfully and tapping on the objects, while from upstairs the girls sang along and created their own rhythms. His face quickly transformed. Surprise, then confusion, then anger. "What the hell is going on here?" he shouted, causing the sounds from upstairs to stop abruptly. Jennifer dropped the objects, feeling her heart race. "Sir, I was just... You were making noise, disturbing my daughter's peace." Richard was red with anger. "How many times do I have to repeat that they need tranquility?" "But, sir, they were singing along. They were happy." "Happy?" he laughed bitterly. "You know nothing about my daughters. You don't know what they need." From upstairs, a small voice came floating down. "Daddy, don't yell at Jennifer." It was Victoria. "She makes us remember Mommy," added Vanessa. Richard turned pale. He looked at the stairs, then at Jennifer, then back at the stairs. "Come down here right now," he ordered. "Sir, please." Jennifer tried. "Quiet." A few minutes later, the two girls carefully descended the stairs, using the handrail as a guide. They walked slowly, but with a confidence that surprised Richard. "How did you come down by yourselves?" he asked, alarmed. "We know, Daddy," said Victoria simply. "We count the steps every day, listening to you all go up and down." "There are 23 steps to the hall," added Vanessa. "Then 12 more to the kitchen, 8 to the living room." Richard was speechless. He didn't know his daughters had mentally mapped the entire house. "Why didn't you tell me?" The two girls exchanged a knowing look, something they did instinctively even though they were blind. "Because Daddy worries about everything," said Vanessa gently. "But we're not babies, Daddy." "We just want to play a little downstairs," added Victoria. "And Jennifer sings just like Mom used to sing." Richard Montgomery sank heavily into an armchair, running his hands through his hair. Jennifer could see the conflict on his face, the fear of a protective father versus the recognition that his daughters were right. "Do you remember your mother singing?" he asked, his voice softer. "Of course, Dad," said Victoria, moving closer to him. "We remember everything. Her voice, the perfume she wore, the way she played the piano. And we know she wouldn't want us to always be locked in our room," said Vanessa, also approaching. Richard hugged both daughters, and Jennifer saw tears streaming down his face. "I just want to protect you," he whispered. "I'm so afraid you'll get hurt, that someone will be cruel to you." "But Dad, if we never go out, we'll never learn to defend ourselves," said Victoria with impressive logic. "And we want to learn things, experience things," added Vanessa. Jennifer watched this emotional scene. For the first time in years, father and daughters were having a real, honest conversation. "Mr. Montgomery," she said carefully, "may I make a suggestion?" He looked at her, tears still in his eyes. "What if we started slowly? Let the girls explore the house a bit more, always with supervision. They are much more capable than you think." "It's true, Dad," said Victoria. "We know the whole house by sound. We know where everything is." To prove the point, Vanessa broke free from her father's embrace and walked to the kitchen, counting her steps aloud. She returned a few minutes later with a glass of water. "How did you know where the glasses were?" asked Richard, amazed. "Mrs. Abigail always gets water for us from the same cabinet. We memorize the sound the door makes when it opens, how many steps she takes." Richard looked at Jennifer with an expression mixing admiration and guilt. "I underestimated them, didn't I?" "You protected them," said Jennifer diplomatically, "but perhaps it's time to show them that you trust their intelligence." That night, something changed in the household dynamic. Richard allowed the girls to dine in the main dining room for the first time in years. Jennifer stayed to help serve and observe how they behaved. The girls knew how to use the cutlery perfectly, ate politely, and maintained an intelligent conversation with their father. They were not the fragile, incapable children Richard had imagined. "Dad," said Victoria during dessert, "can we go to the garden tomorrow?" Richard hesitated. "I don't know, dears. What if you trip? Get hurt?" "We'll go slowly," promised Vanessa. "And Jennifer can come with us." Everyone looked at Jennifer, who felt the weight of responsibility. "I'd love to accompany them," she said. "We can start just on the porch, so they get used to the outdoors." Richard was silent for a long time. "All right," he said finally, "but only on the porch, and I'll be watching from the window." The girls practically jumped for joy. "Thank you, Dad," they shouted in chorus. The next day, Jennifer took the girls to the back porch. It was a spacious area with garden furniture and a view of a well-kept lawn. The girls stood still for a few moments, just breathing the fresh air and listening to the sounds of nature. "So many different birds," said Victoria, tilting her head. "And the wind in the leaves of the trees," added Vanessa. "It's like music." Jennifer guided them to the chairs, and they sat down, still absorbing all the new sensations. "Jennifer," said Victoria, "can you describe the garden to us?" "Of course. In front of us there's a green lawn like a soft carpet. On the left side there's a large tree with white flowers. On the right, flower beds with roses of various colors." "What do the roses smell like?" asked Vanessa. "Let's find out," said Jennifer, leading them to the flower beds. She guided the girls' hands to the flowers, being careful of the thorns. "They're soft and have layers, as if they were made of silk," described Victoria, delicately touching a red rose. "And the scent is sweet but strong," added Vanessa. They spent over an hour exploring the balcony and nearby flower beds. The girls touched different plant textures, heard various types of birds, and felt the sun on their faces for the first time in years. Richard watched them from the office window, visibly nervous at first, but gradually relaxing as he saw how carefully and intelligently they behaved. When they came back inside, the girls were radiant. "Daddy, it was wonderful," said Victoria, running to hug him. "We touched real flowers," added Vanessa. "And you behaved very well," he said, proud. "But now you'll rest." It was too much excitement for one day. As the girls went upstairs to their room, Richard called Jennifer to the office. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what, sir?" "For helping me see my daughters as they really are. I kept them prisoners thinking I was protecting them. Jennifer felt it was the right moment for a deeper conversation. "Mr. Montgomery, may I ask about your wife?" He sighed and sat behind the noble wooden desk. "Catherine was everything to me, and she was everything to the girls. When we found out they were blind, she didn't give up. She researched, studied, learned everything about how to deal with children with visual impairments." His eyes grew distant, lost in memories. "She created special games, adapted songs, invented activities the girls could do. Our house was full of laughter and music, and after the accident, everything changed. I didn't know how to replace what Catherine did. The doctors only talked about limitations, about what the girls could never do, so I thought the best way to protect them was to keep them in total safety. But you can see now that they are capable of much more than you imagined." "Yes," he admitted, "and I have you to thank for that." Jennifer smiled. "Actually, sir, they were the ones who taught me. They showed me how they see the world in a special way." In the following days, the house's routine changed completely. The girls began spending more time on the ground floor, exploring every room under Jennifer's supervision. They discovered they could identify people by the sound of footsteps, by perfume, by the way they breathed. They knew when someone was sad or happy just by the tone of voice. They memorized the location of every piece of furniture, every object. Jennifer began creating special activities for them. She made homemade Play-Doh so they could create shapes with their hands. She brought materials with different textures, sandpaper, velvet, cotton, so they could learn about tactile contrasts. One afternoon, she had a special idea. "Girls, would you like to learn to cook?" "Cook?" both asked, excited. "Of course. Cooking is mainly about textures, aromas, and flavors, things you know very well." With Richard's permission, Jennifer began teaching the girls to prepare simple recipes. They learned to crack eggs, to mix ingredients, to season by the amount of smell. It was fascinating to see how they adapted each task to their abilities. When they needed to measure something, they made small portions until they memorized the right amount. When they needed to know if something was cooked, they used smell and hearing. "The cake is ready when it stops making that bubbling sound," discovered Victoria. "And when the smell changes, it becomes sweeter," added Vanessa. Richard was amazed seeing his daughters develop skills he never imagined they could have. But the biggest surprise came on a Saturday afternoon. Jennifer was in the living room when she heard sounds coming from the music room, a space that had remained closed since Catherine's death. She approached and heard someone playing the piano. It was the girls. They had found the key to the music room and discovered their mother's piano. Victoria was playing a simple melody, while Vanessa sang. It was Little Butterfly, the same song Jennifer had sung on the first day. Jennifer called Richard, who came running downstairs. When he saw his daughters in the music room playing their wife's piano, his tears were impossible to hold back. "How did you learn?" he asked. "We remember Mommy playing," said Victoria. "We used to sit on her lap and feel the movement of her fingers. And now we managed to find the right keys," added Vanessa. At that moment, Richard realized he had underestimated not only his daughters' abilities, but also their memories. They remembered much more about their mother than he had imagined. "Would you like to take piano lessons?" he asked. "Can we, Daddy?" they asked hopefully. "Of course you can. I'll find the best teacher in the city." But Jennifer had another idea. "Mr. Montgomery, I know a very special music teacher. She is also visually impaired and specifically teaches children with the same characteristics as the girls." "Is there really someone like that?" "Yes, there is. Her name is Professor Helen. She gives private lessons and uses special methods to teach music through touch and hearing." A week later, Professor Helen arrived at the mansion. She was an elegant and smiling 50-year-old lady who wore dark glasses and moved around with a white cane. "So these are the famous musical twins," she said upon meeting Victoria and Vanessa. "Jennifer has told me so much about you." The girls were delighted. It was the first time they had met another blind person, someone who understood exactly how they saw the world. "Professor, were you always blind?" asked Vanessa with the typical curiosity of children. "No, dear. I lost my sight at 20 in an accident, but I discovered that when one door closes, many others open." "How so?" asked Victoria. When I stopped seeing with my eyes, I learned to see with my heart, with my hands, with my ears, and I discovered I had a gift for music that I never knew existed. The piano lessons became the highlight of the girls' week. Helen not only taught musical technique, but also confidence and independence. Music is a universal language, she would say, and you two have a special talent for it. Under her guidance, the girls progressed quickly. In just a few weeks, they could already play complete songs and even improvise harmonies together. Richard was moved to hear them play. It was as if Catherine had returned to the house through their daughter's music. But the real test came when Helen suggested something revolutionary. "Mr. Montgomery," she said after one of the lessons, "your daughters have exceptional talent. They should perform in public." "In public?" Richard turned pale. "Absolutely not." "Daddy," interrupted Victoria, who had overheard the conversation. "Why not?" Because, he stammered, searching for a reason that wasn't just fear. "Because you think people will pity us?" asked Vanessa directly. The question hit Richard hard. "That's not it, darlings." "Then what is it, Daddy?" insisted Victoria. "We play well. The teacher said we have talent. Why can't we show people?" Helen intervened diplomatically. "How about we start small? There's a charity recital at the city's music conservatory. It would be an intimate performance for a select audience. Many of the children who perform also have special needs." Richard Montgomery remained silent for a long time. "I need to think." That night, Jennifer Wilson found Richard on the porch, looking out at the garden where the girls had played flowers for the first time. "May I sit?" she asked. He nodded. "You're afraid," she said bluntly. "Very afraid," he admitted. "What if someone is cruel to them? What if they laugh at them or treat them with pity?" "What if they don't?" Jennifer countered. "What if people admire them for their talent, not their disability?" "But what if—" "Mr. Montgomery," Jennifer said gently, "you can protect your daughters from many things, but you can't protect them from life, and they deserve to live." He sighed deeply. "Catherine always said our daughters were special, not because they were blind, but because of who they are. She said one day they would make a difference in the world. And she was right. But they can only make a difference if they get the chance." The next day, Richard gave his answer. All right, they can perform at the recital. The girls' joy was contagious. They began to rehearse with even more dedication, choosing a special song for the performance. Jennifer helped prepare everything. She bought identical dresses for them, light blue, their favorite color, they said, and rehearsed with them how to walk on stage, how to greet the audience. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The day of the performance arrived. Richard was visibly nervous, but the girls were radiant with excitement. "Daddy, don't worry," said Victoria in the car on the way to the conservatory. "We'll play from the heart, just like Mommy taught us. And if we make a mistake, we just keep singing," added Vanessa. "The music always continues." The conservatory was packed. Richard, Jennifer, Mrs. Abigail, and Professor Helen sat in the front row to support the girls. When it was their turn, Jennifer escorted them to the stage. The girls walked confidently, counting the steps they had rehearsed. They sat at the piano, a magnificent grand piano, and placed their hands on the keys. The audience fell into an expectant silence. Then they began to play. The song they chose was "Imagine" by John Lennon, adapted for piano, 4 hands. But it wasn't just the music that was impressive, it was the perfect harmony between them, as if they were one person playing. And then they began to sing. Their voices complemented each other perfectly, one carrying the main melody, and the other creating beautiful harmonies. They sang in English and Portuguese, alternating between the two versions of the song. The audience was mesmerized. Many had tears in their eyes, not of pity, but of pure admiration. When they finished, the silence lasted a few seconds. Then an enthusiastic applause erupted that lasted for minutes. The girls stood up, bowed as they had rehearsed, and smiled radiantly. "Thank you," said Victoria into the microphone. "This song is for our mother, who taught us that music comes from the heart." And for our father, who learned that we see with much more than our eyes, added Vanessa. The applause started again, even louder. Richard couldn't stop crying. For the first time, he saw his daughters as the world would see them, not as limited children, but as talented artists, as special and inspiring people. After the performance, several people came up to congratulate the girls. There was no pity, no condescension, only genuine admiration for their talent. "You are amazing," said an elderly lady. "How long have you studied music?" "We started a few months ago," replied Victoria. "But we've always listened to music at home. Our mommy was a music teacher," added Vanessa. "We learned from her even without seeing." A mother with a visually impaired child approached. "Thank you," she said, with tears in her eyes. "You showed me that my son can do anything he wants." That night, on the way home, the atmosphere in the car was pure happiness. "Daddy," said Victoria, "can we do more performances?" "And can we visit other blind children?" asked Vanessa, "to show them they can play music too?" Richard looked at Jennifer in the rearview mirror. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think your daughters have a mission in life," replied Jennifer, "and I think it's time to let them fulfill that mission." In the following months, the family's life changed completely. The girls began performing regularly, always accompanied by their family. They visited schools, hospitals, rehabilitation centers. Richard discovered a new passion, supporting other families facing similar challenges. He used his fortune to create an institute that offered free music lessons for children with visual impairments. Jennifer was promoted to coordinator of the institute, working directly with families and developing innovative teaching methods. Professor Helen became the musical director of the institute, training other teachers in her special techniques. And Mrs. Abigail, she turned out to be a wonderful surrogate grandmother, supporting the girls in all their adventures and finally being able to show all the affection she had always felt for them. But the real transformation was in Richard. The cold, controlling man Jennifer had met on the first day had completely disappeared. In his place was a proud father who supported his daughters in every dream and discovery. "Jennifer," he said one afternoon, a few months after the recital, "do you know what the real miracle that happened in this house was?" "What, sir?" "It wasn't making my daughters see. It was making me see who they really are." The girls, now 9 years old, had become local celebrities, but more importantly, they had become happy, confident, and independent children. They attended a special school a few mornings a week, kept up with their music lessons, freely explored the garden, and even helped in the kitchen. One afternoon, Jennifer found them in the music room, not playing the piano, but playing with water guns they had received as a gift. "Jennifer," shouted Victoria, "come play with us." "It's war," declared Vanessa, laughing. Jennifer grabbed a water gun and joined the fun. They ran around the room, hid behind furniture, laughed loudly. That's when Richard came home from work. He entered the room just as the three were at the peak of their play, all wet, laughing loudly, completely carefree. For a second, Jennifer thought he would be angry about the mess, but then he did something totally unexpected. He grabbed the spare water gun and shouted, "Watch out, girls, Daddy's joined the war." And he joined the fun. They spent half an hour running through the house, getting wet, laughing, just being a normal, happy family. When they stopped, exhausted and happy, the girls threw themselves into their father's lap. "Thank you for letting us play, Daddy," said Victoria. "Thank you for letting us live," added Vanessa. In that moment, Jennifer knew her mission was complete. She had come to that house to work as a cleaner, but ended up doing much more. She had helped clean not just the furniture and the floor, but also the fear and sadness that had accumulated in those halls. The real miracle hadn't been curing the girls' blindness. The real miracle had been opening the entire family's eyes to the endless possibilities that exist within every limitation. The twins didn't need to see with their eyes to light up the world around them. They did this with their smiles, with their music, with their determination to show that different doesn't mean less capable. And Richard had learned the most important lesson of all, that loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from the world, but giving them the tools to face the world with courage. Months later, The institute created by Richard was already serving over 100 children. The twins' performances had inspired dozens of other families to believe in their children's potential. Jennifer continued working with them, but now as a family friend, tutor, and coordinator of the institute. Her life had changed as much as theirs, and on a special afternoon, exactly 1 year after that first conversation on the staircase, something magical happened. The girls were playing piano in the music room when they started a new song, an original composition they had created. It was a sweet and hopeful melody, with lyrics about overcoming challenges and family love. Richard was listening, moved when he noticed something that gave him chills. The melody was exactly like a song Catherine used to hum when she was happy, a song she had never taught the girls because it was just a little tune she made up on the spot. But somehow, through the memory of the heart, through the connection that only exists between mothers and children, the girls had found that song and transformed it into their own creation. "How do you know this melody?" he asked, his voice choked. "We don't, Daddy," said Victoria. "We made it up." "It came from the heart," explained Vanessa, "like Mommy always said music should." At that moment, Richard felt Catherine's presence in the room, not in a supernatural way, but through the love she had planted in her daughters' hearts, through the values she had passed on, through the music that continued to live in that house. Jennifer, who was watching everything from the doorway, smiled through her tears. She had witnessed many special moments in that family, but this one might have been the most magical of all. The girls continued playing, their voices harmonizing perfectly, filling the house with music, joy, and hope. And Jennifer knew, with absolute certainty, that the miracle that had happened in that house had not been her doing. She had merely been the instrument. The true miracle had been love, determination, and the human ability to overcome any obstacle when the right people meet at the right time. The Billionaire's twins hadn't been born blind by chance. They had been born that way to teach the world, and especially their father, that there are many ways to see, and that the most important ones happen with the heart. 2 years later, Victoria and Vanessa performed at Lincoln Center for an audience of 2,000 people. They played a full concert, including their own compositions. Richard was in the front row alongside Jennifer, Mrs. Abigail, Professor Helen, and dozens of other children from the institute they had inspired. During the performance, the girls dedicated a special song. "This song is for all the people who believe that limitation is just a word," said Victoria into the microphone. "And especially for one very special person who came to our house to clean the floor, but ended up cleaning our hearts of sadness." "Jennifer," said Vanessa, "you taught us that everyone has a song inside their chest. Sometimes it just needs someone to help find the right melody." The applause was deafening. And so, what had begun as the story of 2 isolated blind girls became the story of a family that learned to see with the heart, of a community that discovered the true meaning of inclusion, and of dozens of children who found their own inner music. The miracle had been real. Not the miracle of physical sight, but the far more powerful miracle of the soul's vision, of the music that connects hearts, and of the certainty that there are no limitations for those who have love, determination, and the right people by their side. The end. And what about you, dear listener? What did you think of this story of overcoming and family love? Do you believe Jennifer made the right choice by insisting on showing the twins that they could live a full and happy life? Tell us your opinion in the comments. We really want to know what you think. And if this story touched your heart as much as it touched ours, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one.